the 30 seconds. That's good.
Okay, folks, I think we're going to get started, which means I'm going to record. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's really great to have all of you here with us tonight. I'm going to remind people to go onto speaker view, because that way you'll be able to see the play in all its glory. So we're going to begin with a play that Jordan has fashioned out of a short story. And of course, the theme tonight is forgiveness, because Selichot, which is our holiday tonight, is a holiday about forgiveness. We have some penitentiary prayers that get us started for our journey to the high holidays. We ask for God's compassion to forgive us for our trespasses. And we will also be changing the Torah covers, because white will be the color to show that we are pure as the angels, or at least aspiring to be as pure as the angels as possible. So without further ado, we will, and so let me just tell you, by the way, what the schedule is. So Jordan's play is about 45 minutes. We'll talk about it for 10 minutes or so afterwards, and then we'll take a little 5-minute break, and then we'll have a service, which shouldn't be more than about a half an hour. So please enjoy the play.
How We Avenge the Blums by Nathan Englander. If you head out to Greenheath, Long Island today, you'll find out that the schoolyard where Zvi Blum was attacked is more or less as it was. The bell at the public school still rings through the weekend, and the bushes behind the lot where we played hockey still stand. The only difference is that the sharp screws, jagged edges of the jungle gym are gone. Playground stripped of all adventure, sissified and padded and covered with a snow of shredded tires. And it was onto this lot that Zvi Blum, the littlest of the 3 Blum boys, stepped. During the week, we played in the parking lot behind our yeshiva. Now, where slap shots sent gravel flying, but on Shabbos afternoons, we ventured into the fine, uncracked asphalt of the public school. The first to arrive for our game, Zvi wore his helmet with a metal face protector snapped in place. He had on his gloves and held a stick in his hand. Zvi worked up a sweat playing a fantasy game while he waited for the rest of us to arrive. And after a fake around an imaginary opponent, he found himself at a real and sudden halt. The boy we feared most stood before him. It was Greenheath's local anti-Semite, with a row of friends beyond. The anti-Semite had, until then, abided by a certain understanding. We stepped gingerly in his presence, looking beaten, which seemed to satisfy his need to beat us for real. The anti-Semite took a hold of Zvi's face mask as if Blum was a bowling ball. Zvi looked past the bully and the jungle gym, through the chain link fence and up Crocus Avenue, hoping we'd appear. A dozen or more boys wearing helmets, wielding sticks. How nice, like an army, if we'd arrived. The anti-Semite let go of Zvi's mask. "You Jewish?" he asked. "I don't know," Zvi said. "You don't know if you're Jewish?" "No," Zvi said. He scratched at the asphalt with his hockey stick. Bully turned to his friends, taking a poll of suspicious glances. "Your mother never told you?" the anti-Semite asked. Zvi shifted his weight and kept on with his scratching. Never came up. Zvi remembered a distinct extended pause while the anti-Semite considered. Zvi thought he may have been wishing that he saw the first of us coming down the road. He was out cold when we got there, beaten unconscious with his helmet on, his stick and gloves missing. We were no expert at forensics, but we knew immediately that he'd been worsted. And because he was suspended by his underwear from one of the bolts on the swing set, we also knew that a wedgie had been administered along the way. We thought he was dead. We had no dimes to make a telephone call, money being forbidden on Sabbath. Well, we did nothing for way too long, and then Beryl started crying. And Harry ran to the Wilmsteins, who debated while they fetched the Muxakis which one of them should drive in an emergency. Some whispered that our nemesis was half Jewish. His house was nestled in the dead end behind our school, and the ire of the anti-Semite and his family was said to have been awakened when, after he'd attended kindergarten with us in our yeshiva for some months and had been welcomed as a little son of Israel, the rabbis discovered that only his father was Jewish. The boy, deemed Gentile, was ejected from the class and led home by his shamefaced mother. Rabbi Federbush, he latched the gate behind them as the boy licked at the finger paint, non-toxic, still wet on his hands. We all knew the story, and I wondered what it was like for that boy, growing up, growing large, on the other side of the fence. His mother sometimes looked our way as she came and went from the house. She didn't reveal anything that we were mature enough to read, only kept on, often with a palm pressed to the small of her back. After Zvi's beating, the police were called. My parents, they wouldn't have done it and let that fact be known. What good will it come, my father said. Zvi's parents had already determined that their son had suffered nothing beyond bruising. His bones were unbroken and his brain unconcussed. Call the police on every anti-Semite, my mother said, and they'll need a separate force. The Blums thought differently. Mrs. Blum's parents had been born in America. She'd grown up in Connecticut and attended public school. She felt no distrust for the uniform, believed the authorities were there to protect her. The police cruiser rolled slowly down the hill with the Blums in procession behind it. They marched, the parents and three sons, little Zvi with his gauze-wrapped head held high. The police spoke to the anti-Semite's mother, who propped the screen door open with a foot. After her son had been called to the door for questioning, Mrs. Blum and Zvi were waved up. They approached, but did not touch the 3 brick steps. It was word against word. An accusing mother and son, a pair disputing, and no witnesses to be had. The police didn't make an arrest, and the Blums did not press charges. The retribution exacted from the anti-Semite that day came in the form of a motherly chiding. The boy's mother looked at the police, at the Blums, at the 3 steps between them. She took her boy by the collar and, pulling him down to a manageable height, slapped him across the face. Whether it's coloreds or kids with horns, she said, I don't want you beating on those that are small. We'd long imagined that Greenheath was like any other town, except for its concentration of girls in ankle-length jean skirts and white canvas keds, and boys in sloppy Oxford shirts with their yarmulkes hanging down as if sewn to the side of their heads. And then there was their fathers' weekday rituals. When they disembarked from the cars of the Long Island Railroad in the evenings, hands reached into pockets and yarmulkes were slipped back into place. The beating reminded us that these differences were not so small. Our parents were born and raised in Brooklyn. In Greenheath, they built us a Jewish Shangri-La, providing us with everything but the one crucial thing Brooklyn had offered. It wasn't stickball or kick the can, acceptable losses, though nostalgia ran high. No, it was a quality that we were missing, a toughness. As a group of boys, 13 and 14, we grew healthy, we grew polite, but our parents thought us soft. Now, frightened as we were, we thought so too. So this is why we turned to Ace Cohen. He was the biggest Jew in town. He was half senior of us by half a dozen years, and he was the toughest Jew we knew, the only one who'd smoked pot, who'd ever been arrested, and he owned both a broken motorcycle and an arcade version of Asteroids. He left a coin panel open and would play endlessly on a single quarter, fishing it out when he was finished. In our admiration, we never considered that, at 19 or 20, we might want to move out of our parents' basements or go to college. We thought only that he lived a good life. No cares, no job, his own Asteroids, and a mini fridge by his bed where he kept his ringdings ice cold. Not my beef, little Jew boys, is what he told us when we begged him to beat up the anti-Semite on our behalf. Violence breeds violence, he said, slapping at buttons. Older and wiser, trust me when I tell you, let it go. But we called the police, V said. We went to his house with my parents and them. Unfortunate, Ace said, looking down at little Zvi. Unfortunate, my buddy, for you. It's a delicate thing being Jewish, Ace said. It's a condition that aggravates the more you pay it. Now let it go. I tell you, if you insist on fighting, then at least fight them yourselves. Well, it would be easier if you did, we told him. And I bet, big as your anti-Semite is, that he too, in direct proportion, also has bigger friends. Escalation, Ace said, escalation built in. You don't want to get this so bad so that you really need me. But what if we did, we said. And Ace didn't answer. Frustrated and defeated, we left him, Ace Cohen, blowing the outlines of Asteroids apart. They were all heroes to us, every single one of Russia's oppressed. We'd seen Gulag on cable television and learned that for escapes across vast snowy tundras, 2 prisoners would invite a third to join so that they'd eat him along the way. We were moved by this as boys and fantasized about sacrifice, wondering which one of our classmates we'd devour. Our parents were active in the fight for refuseniks' freedom in the 1980s. Every Russian Jew was a refusnik, whether he wanted to be or not. We children, we donated our reversible vested 3-piece suits to help clothe Jewish unfortunates of all nations. And when occasion demanded, we were taken from our classes and put on buses to march for the release of our Soviet brethren. Now, we got our own refusnik in Greenheath right after Zvi's assault. Boris, he was the janitor at the Royal Hills Yeshiva. He was refilling the towel dispenser in the faculty lounge when he heard of our troubles. Boris was Russian and Jewish, and he'd served in Brezhnev's army and the Israeli one to boot. He made his sympathies known to the teachers from Greenheath, voicing his outrage over our plight. That very Friday, a space was made in the Chevy Nova in which they carpooled while listening to Mishnah on tape. Now, Boris came to town for Shabbos, and then another, and then he slept 24 hours a day, and eaten while he slept, and he still couldn't have managed to be hosted by a fraction of the families that wanted to house and feed him, and then feed him some more. The parents were thrilled to have their own refusnik, a menial laborer yet. A young man who pushed a broom for a living, and they hadn't been so excited since the mothers went on an AMIT tour of the Holy Land and saw Jews driving buses and a man wearing tzitzit delivering mail. Boris was Greenheath's own Sharansky, and our parents gave great weight to his dire take on our situation. His sometimes fractured English added his own gravity to the proceedings. When a hooligan gets angry, he would say, "When drinking too much, the anti-Semite will charge." When the first informal self-defense class was given the day, Boris was at Larry Lipshitz's, playing in television hockey and teaching Larry to smoke. It ended with Larry on the basement floor, the wind knocked out of him and a sort of a wheeze coming from his throat. "How much?" he said to Boris. "How much what?" was Boris's answer. He displayed a rare tentativeness, which Larry might have noticed if he hadn't been trying to breathe. "A lesson," Larry said. And here was the wonder of America, the land of opportunity. In Russia, if you punched someone in the stomach, you did it for free. A monthly rate was set, and Larry spread the word. Now, that was also the day that Barry Perlman was descended upon by our nemesis as he left Vardit's Pizza and Falafel. His takeout order was taken. The vegetarian egg rolls, a staple of all places kosher, no matter the cuisine, were bitten into. A large pizza and tahini platter were spread over the street. Barry was beaten, and then as soon as he was able, he raced back into the store. Vardit, the owner, wiped the sauce from little Perlman. She remade the order in full, charging only the pizza to his account. The Perlmans didn't want trouble. The police were not called. Barry Perlman was the second to sign up. And then came the Kleins and cockeyed Shlomo, whose mother sent him because of the current climate, though really she wanted him to learn to defend himself from us. Our rabbis at school needed to approve of the militant group we were forming. They remembered how Israel was founded with the aid of Neely and the Haganah and the undergrounds of yore. They didn't much approve of a Jewish state without a Messiah, but they gave us permission to present our proposal to Rabbi Federbush, the founder of our community and the dean of our yeshiva. His approval was granted, but only grudgingly. The old man is not to be blamed. Karate he knew nothing of. The closest sport he was familiar with was wrestling, and this is from rabbinic lore, a Greco-Roman version. So his main point of protest, therefore, was that we'd be wrestling the uncircumcised publicly and in the nude. Well, when the proposal was rephrased, and he was told that we were being trained to battle the descendants of Amalek, who attacked the Israelites in the desert, and that we were gearing up to face the modern-day spawn of Haman, cursed be his name, when told it was to fight the anti-Semite, he nodded, understanding. Cossacks, he said, and he agreed. Now, it wasn't exactly a pure martial art, but an amalgam of Israeli Krav Maga, Russian hand-to-hand combat, and Boris's own messy form of endless attack. He showed us how to fold a piece of paper so that it could be used to take an eye out or open a throat. And he always told us to travel with a circuit tester clipped to our breast pocket like a pen. And when possible, Boris advised us, have a new gun waiting at each destination. He claimed to have learned this during the stint with the Finger of God, searching out Nazis in Argentina, and then acting as a military tribunal of one, finding them guilty and putting a bullet between their eyes. We were taught to punch and kick, to stomp and bite, while the mainstay of all suburban martial arts classes, when you can avoid confrontation, you do it, was removed. Boris told us to hold our ground. Worst case, he said, raise hand like in defeat and kick balls. After a few weeks of lessons, we began to understand the power we had. And Boris had paired Larry Lipschitz with that wisp of a boy with Aaron, the middle Blum. And they went at it in Larry's backyard, circling and jabbing with a paltry amount of rage. Boris stood off to one side, his arms resting on his paunch, a belly that on him was the picture of good health, as if it were the place from which all his strength emanated, a single muscle providing power to all other parts. Boris spat in the grass and stepped forward. You're fighting, fight! He put his foot to Aaron's behind and he catapulted him into his opponent. Friends later, now win. Larry Lipschitz let out a yawp befitting a larger man, and then with speed and with grace, he landed the first solid roundhouse kick we'd seen delivered. With no sparring partners hit, but a shoulder fake, and all his might strike. The ball of his foot connecting with Aaron's kidney. Larry didn't offer a hand. He stepped back like a champion, raised his fists high up in the air. Aaron hobbled to the nearest tree and displayed for us the first fruits of our training. He dropped his pants, took aim, and I tell you, it was nothing less than water to wine for us when Aaron Blum peed blood. It's curious that the story most often used to inspire Jewish battle readiness is that of Masada, an episode involving the last holdouts of an ascetic Israelite sect who committed suicide in a mountain fortress. The battle was fought valiantly, though without an enemy present. Jews bravely doing harm to themselves. The only Roman casualties died of frustration in their encampment below. 8 months in the desert spent building a ramp to storm fortress walls for a slaughter, and the deed had already been done when they arrived. An Israeli army recruits, and they complete their basic training. They climb up that mountain and they scream out into the echo, "A second time Masada won't fall." Boris made us do the same over the edge of Greenheath Pond, a body of water whose circulation had slowed, a thick green soup that sent back no sound. Mostly, the harassment was aimed at the Blum boys and their house. I don't know if this was because their proximity to the anti-Semites' house, the call to the police, the anti-Semites' public slap in the face. I sometimes can't help thinking that the Blum boys were chosen as targets because they looked to the bully as they looked to me, enticingly victim-like and small. Over time, an M80 was used to blow up the Blum mailbox. 4 tires were slashed on a sensible Blum car. A shaving cream swastika was painted on their walkway, but it washed away in the rain before anyone could document its existence. When we ran into the anti-Semite, insults were inevitably hurled and punches thrown. Larry took a thrashing without managing to his now legendary kick. Shaken, he demanded his money's worth of Boris and made it very clear he now feared for his life. Boris shrugged it off. "Not so easy," he assured him. "Shot and lived, stabbed and lived. Not so easy to get dead." My father witnessed the abuse. He came upon the 3 Blum boys crawling around and picking up pennies for the right to cross the street, the bully and his friends enforcing. My father scattered the boys, all but the 3 Blums, who stood there, red in the face, hot pennies in their hands. The most severe attack was the shotgun blast that shattered the Blum's bay window. We marked it as the start of dark days, though the shells were packed only with rock salt. We stepped up our training and also our level of subterfuge. We memorized kata and combinations. We learned to march in lockstep, to run, leap, and roll in silence. Lying on our backs in a row with feet raised, head raised, abdomens flexed, we listened to Boris lecture while he ran over us, stepping from stomach to stomach as if crossing a river on stones. Peace, Boris insisted, was maintained through fear. "You know which countries have no anti-Semite?" he asked. We didn't have the answer. The country with no Jew. The struggle would not end on its own. The bully would not mature, see the error of his ways, or learn to love the other. He would hate until he was dead. He would fight until he was dead. And unless we killed him or beat him until he thought we had killed him, we'd have no truce, no peace, no quiet. In case we didn't understand the limitations of even the best case scenario, Boris explained it to us again. The man hits. In future, he'll hit wife, hit son, hit dog. We want only that he won't hit Jew. Let him go hit someone else. Despite all the bumps pushed back into foreheads and the braces freed from upper lips, I'm convinced our parents thought our training was worth the effort. I'm convinced our mothers, they bought frozen steaks to press against black eyes and stood close as our fathers tilted our chins and hid smiles. Quite a shiner, they would say. They'd hardly stand to give up staring when the steaks covered our wounds. Along with the training injuries, we had other setbacks. One was a tactical error when, post-shotgun blast, we went as a group to egg the anti-Semite's house. Shlomo thought he heard a noise and yelled, "Anti-Semite!" in warning. We screamed back, we dropped our eggs and fled in response. Now, this all took place more than a block away from his house. We hadn't even gotten our target in sight. We weren't cohesive. We knew how to move as a group, but not as a gang. We needed practice. After 2,000 years of being chased, we didn't have any hunt in us. We sought help from Chungshik through Yitzi. Now, Yitzi, who was an Israeli with an unfortunate heritage, Yitzi's parent had brought him to America with the last name Penis, which even among kind children doesn't play well. We teased Yitzi Penis ruthlessly, and as a result, he formed a real friendship with his Gentile neighbor Chungshik, the only Asian boy in town. Both showed up happily. Yitzi delighted in being asked to bring his pal along, and so we proposed it, our plan. "Can we practice on you?" we asked. "Practice what?" Chungshik said amiably. Yitzi, practically aglow at his side. When no one else answered, Harry spoke. A reverse pogrom," he said. "A what?" "Well, we just want to menace you," Harry said. "Chase you around a bit as a group, because you're different, to get a feel for it." Chungshik looked to his friend. You could see we were losing him, and Yitzi had already lost his smile. That's when Zvi pleaded, almost a cry of desperation. "Come on, you're the only different kid we know." Yitzi held Chungshik's stare, the Asian boy looking back, not scared as much as disappointed. "Chase me instead," Yitzi said, sort of pantomiming that he could be Chungshik, Chungshik could be him, switch off the yarmulke and all. We abandoned the idea right then. It wouldn't be the same. Our failed offensive got back to Boris, as well as the reverse pogrom that wasn't, the continuing rise in Blum-related trouble, and the chases home from school. The rock salt still stung us all. We met in the rec room with the shul. Boris had swiped a film strip and accompanying audio cassette from the yeshiva he worked at in Royal Hills. He advanced the strip in the projector, a single frame every time the tape went beep. We knew the film well. We knew when the image would shift from the pile of shoes to the pile of hair, from the pile of bodies to the pile of teeth, to the pile of combs. The film was a sacred teaching tool, brought out only on Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Memorial Day. Each year, the sound man's wooden blocks clopping, the sound of those boots coming up the stairs. First, they dragged off the symbolic father and mother, and then clop, clop, clop. Those boots marched away. The lights still dimmed, we would form two lines, one boys, one girls. We marched back to class this way, singing Ani Ma'amin, and holding in our heads the picture they painted for us. 6 million Jews marching into the gas chambers, 2 by 2, a double line 3 million strong and singing in one voice, "I believe in the coming of the Messiah." Boris did not split us into two quiet lines. He did not start us on a moving round of that song, or an equally rousing, "We are leaving Mother Russia with its coda, when they come for us, we'll be gone." After the film, he turned the lights back on. He said to us, yelled at us, "Like sheep to the slaughter, 6 million Jews is 12 million fists." And then he segued from fists and Jewish fighting to the story of brave Trumpeldor, who Boris claimed lost an arm in the Battle of Tel Hai, and then continue fighting with the one. Galvanized, we went straight to the anti-Semite's house. Zvi Blum, beaten, bothered, dug a hunk of paving stone out of the walkway to avenge his family's bay window. He tossed that rock with all his might. Limited athlete that he was, it hooked left and hit the wall of the house with a great bang. We fled, still imperfect, still in retreat. We ran with euphoria, hooting and hollering, victorious. A newfound energy emerged at the start of the next class, which was the start of the next new session. We lined up to pay Boris, which was now a quarterly fee. He took 3 months' worth of cash in one hand, patted us each on the back with the other, and said, "Not yet leaders, but you've turned into men." Boris even said this to the conservative boy, though it was Eliot's first lesson. He then addressed us regarding our successful mission. "Anti-Semite will come back harder," he said, declaring that only strong offense would see this conflict to its end. Pyrotechnics were in order. We ventured out to the turnpike that marked the border of our town in the alley behind ShopRite, and we worked on demolitions, following recipes from Boris's training and inspired by some pages torn from an Abby Hoffman book. We made smoke bombs and didn't smoke, and fire bombs that never burned. And though we suspected that the recipes themselves were faulty, Boris shook his head as if we'd never learn. We stuck with our bomb making, working feverishly, with Boris timing each attempt and at intervals yelling, "Too late, already dead." Then Eliot stood up with a concoction of his own, a bottle with a rag stuffed in the top, and announced, "This is how you build a bomb." To prove it, he lit the rag, arced back, and threw the bottle. We watched it soar, easily traceable by its fiery tail. We heard it hit and the sound of glass, and then nothing. "So what?" Aaron said. "That's not a bomb. By definition, it has to go boom." And we went back to work until Boris said, "Lesson over." And a yellow light began to chip at the darkness in the sky. A warm yellow light and smoke. "Not a bomb," Eliot said, looking proud and terrified in equal measure. His bottle, we discovered, had hit the Te Amo cigar and smoke shop. It ignited the garbage in the rear of the store. The drive-through window was engulfed in flames. "Simplest, sometimes best," Boris said. And then, class dismissed. We started to panic, and he said, "Fire could be from anything." Right then, his pockets full of our money, and already in possession of our hearts and heads, Boris walked off. He walked toward the burning store, so close to the flames that we covered our eyes. True to his teachings, Boris didn't turn and run. He didn't stop either. We know for sure that he went back to Royal Hills and worked another day. All our parents ever said was, "Green card." And we heard that Boris continued west to Chicago and built a new life. Mr. Blum was still at the office. The three boys Blum were each manning a window at home and staring out into the dark. They had on their own and in broad daylight gone down the hill and with toilet paper and shaving cream, and they draped the trees and marked the sidewalks, unleashing on their target the suburban version of tar and feathers. Then they'd run up to their house and taken their posts, holding them through nightfall. When their mother pulled the car into the garage after her own long day at work, she saw only what the boys hadn't done. She made her way back down the driveway to the curb, where the garbage pails stood empty. One of them tipped by the wind. Basic responsibilities stand even in times of trouble. She had not borne 3 sons so that she'd have to drag garbage pails inside. No one knew the quality of the anti-Semite's night vision. The only claim they could make would be made in his defense is that until the lapse, the Blum boys had been the sole draggers of the garbage pails on every other trash day in memory. In the Blum boys' defense, and they would forever feel they needed one, 3 watched windows left one side of the house unguarded. All that said, the sound of metal pails being dragged up a gravel driveway brought the anti-Semite racing out of the dark and masked his approach for Mrs. Blum. Mrs. Blum, of course, had not been in our class. She had no notion of self-defense and was wholly unfamiliar with weaponry. When this brute materialized before her, his arm already in motion, she did not assume a defensive posture. She did not raise her fists or prepare to lunge. What she did was turn at the last instant to get a look at the tiny leather wand sticking out from his swinging hand. She had never seen a blackjack before. When the single blow met with the muscles of her back, it sent a shock through her system so great that she saw 1,000 pinpricks in her eyes and felt her legs give way completely. Connecticut or no, Mrs. Blum was a Jew. "Shonda," she said to the boy who was already loping off. Ah, those poor Blums. As we had found Zvi discovered his own mother, not hanging from a bolt, but curled in the grass. Inside the house, an ice pack in place and refusing both hospital and house call. Mrs. Blum told her sons what she'd seen. "Shonda," she said again. "Shonda." The boys agreed. A shame and an embarrassment. When their mother lifted the receiver to call the police, Aaron pressed his finger down into the cradle of the phone. Mrs. Blum looked at her son and then replaced the receiver as Aaron slid his finger away. "Not this time," he said. And this time she didn't. When my mother told my father what had happened, he didn't want to believe it. "Nobody ever wants to believe what happens to the Jews," she said. "Not even us." My father simply shook his head. "Since when," my mother said, "do anti-Semites have limits? They will cross the line. They'll cross all lines. Greenheath no better." Then she, too, took to shaking her head. I was sorry I told her. Sorry to witness her telling him. Now, we'd known our parents would respond with hands to mouth and "Oives mears," but none of us expected to see such obvious disillusionment with the world they'd built. I turned away. Though we'd been abandoned, Boris's wisdom still held sway. We were going to see to it that the anti-Semite never hit back again. Anti-Semite school, Harry Blum called it, mustering a Boris-like tone. A boy who attacks a woman half his size, who had already attacked her son, would, if able, do the same thing again. We decided we would use V as our siren, set him out in the middle of the lot at the public school so that the anti-Semite might be drawn by the irresistible call of the vulnerable Jew. The rest of us would stay hidden in those bushes and then fall on our enemy as one. But looking from face to face, taking in Skinny Lipschitz and Fat Beryl, the 3 Blums full of anger and without any reach, we realized we couldn't defeat the anti-Semite even as a group. Boris was right. It was true what he'd said about us. We were ready, we were raring, and we were useless without a leader. Well, we went off like that, leaderless, to Ace Cohen's house. Tears, mind you. We saw tears in Ace Cohen's eyes. He stopped playing his asteroids, did not get back into bed. Little Mrs. Blum attacked was too much to bear. So much aggression, he agreed, needed to be avenged. So you'll join us, we said, assuming the matter had been decided. But he wouldn't. He still didn't want any part of us. A singular matter, the blow to Mrs. Blum, and likewise, a singular matter, he felt, was the act of revenge. One punch is what he offered. You got me my heebie-jeebies, but only for one swing. We pressed him for more. We begged leadership of him. He showed us his empty hands. One punch, take it or leave it. Certain things went according to plan. When the anti-Semite arrived, he showed up alone. That he passed on a Saturday and in a mood to confront Zvi, we took as a sign of the righteousness of our scheme. We'd already been hiding in those bushes all morning, skipping shul, sore and stiff. We were sure that the creaking of our joints would give us away, and the sound of our breathing and all our hearts raced would reveal the trap we'd laid. And Zvi, what can be said about that brave Blum? Out there alone on the asphalt between the jungle gym and the bushes, cooking under the hot sun, Zvi was poised in his three-piece suit, a red yarmulke like a bullseye on top of his head. The anti-Semite immediately began to badger Zvi. Zvi, empowered, enraged, and under the impression that we would immediately charge, spewed his own epithets back. The moment was glorious. Little Zvi in his suit, addressing, apparently, the belt buckle on that mountain of a bully, raised an accusing finger. You shouldn't have, Zvi said. His words came out tough. They came out beautiful. So boldly that they reached us in the bushes and clearly moved the anti-Semite to the point of imminent violence. The situation would have been perfect if not for one unfortunate complication. The small matter of Ace Cohen's resistance. Ace Cohen was unwilling to budge. We begged him to charge with us, to rescue Zvi. Second thoughts, he said. Fine line between retaliation and aggression. Sorry, I'll need to see some torment for myself. We implored him, but we didn't charge alone. We all stayed put until push came to shove, until the anti-Semite started beating Zvi Blum in earnest, until Zvi, his clip-on tie separated from his neck, hit the ground with a thud. And then we sprang out of the bushes. Right on Ace's heels, we had the anti-Semite surrounded, and Zvi pulled free with relative ease. Ace Cohen, 3 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier, faced the bully down. Keep away. That's all Ace said. And then, without form or chi power, his feet in no particular stance, Ace swung his fist so wide and so slowly that we couldn't believe anyone might fail to get out of the way. But maybe the punch just looked slow because the bully took it. He caught it right on the chin. He took it without rocking back. An exceptional feat, even before we knew that his jaw was broken. He remained stock still for a second or two. Not a bit of him moved except for that bottom jaw, which had unhinged like a snake's and made a solid quarter turn to the side. And then he dropped. Ace pushed his way through the circle we'd formed. It closed right back up around the anti-Semite, bloodied and now writhing before us. As I watched him, I knew I'd always feel that to be broken was better than to break. My failing, I also knew that the deep rumble rolling through us was only nerves, a sensitivity to imagined repercussion. as if a sound was built into revenge. What we really shared in that instant was simple. Anyone who stood with us that day will tell you the same. With the anti-Semite at our feet, confusion came over all of us. We stood there, looking at that crushed boy, and none of us knew when to run.
I'd like to give us an opportunity to talk briefly about this story, because certainly at this time in our history, anti-Semitism has reared its ugly head again, even in this country. And I guess the question that this story raises is, do we take revenge? Do we do an eye for an eye? Or do we forgive in some way? Or do we find some other approach? So if you want, we can go to gallery view and we can all look at each other. And if people have some thoughts about that, there've been times in our history, for example, in the United States, when the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, took matters into their own hands under Mayor Kahane. Certainly, the Zionists believe that, you don't just go like sheep to the slaughter, but the feeling at the end of it from these children is that it really was not a very satisfying way to deal with the problem. So I'm curious to know if people have some thoughts about that.
I'd just like to say that that was such a brilliant reading, interpretation, adaptation.
Thank you, Myra. On behalf of Jordan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you very much.
It's like, this story builds up to this climax where you think, okay, these kids are being trained and they're going to really give it to him, right? And they're pushing this guy who's the tougher one to go ahead and give it to him. And, he's really reluctant, but he finally does it. And it's exactly the opposite of what you expect. They don't feel like, whoa, that was great. They feel terrible about it. So I guess that leaves us to, ask the question. So how do you handle, whether it's anti-Semitism or some other horrible thing that's done to you? How do you respond? Do you respond in kind? Do you find some other way?
Can I tell a story that happened to us?
Please tell a story, Carolee.
Yes, Jordan, that was really nice. We went years and years ago to a ranch in Wyoming, and there were 2 cabins, and we stayed in one cabin, and we were alone in one cabin for a while. And there's a lot more to the story, but I won't go into it. And then a family moved into the other. I guess we stayed 2 weeks, and so another family came in after the second week. And these kids were all our kids' ages, and Tina found this nice little friend. And then one day, the little friend found out that Tina was Jewish. And the little friend said, "You're Jewish. You're going to go to hell." And Tina just looked at her and said, "Oh, nobody believes that anymore," and went on her way. It didn't bother her. She just had an answer. So I guess in telling the story, maybe you can diffuse something like that with words rather than with fists.
Do you think the people who demonstrated in North Carolina saying Jews will not replace us will respond to words?
Oh, no, that's a lot of people. Well, one-on-one, you may be able to diffuse.
That is
anyway,
true. That is true. You know, there's a story, and I'm sure there are others like it, of an anti-Semite who lived across the street from some Jews and, you know, virulently anti-Semitic. And somehow, I don't remember the entire story, but the man ended up getting sick. They ended up taking care of him. You know, they sort of did the opposite approach. The story I told, I think, a couple of years ago in a sermon about a guy who's actually the godson of David Duke, who was brought up to be very anti-Semitic, white supremacist, and everything else. And he actually had his own radio show, and he you know, and he went to college somewhere that was not where you would typically find somebody like that, because he wanted to major in something that was only offered there. And he ended up being invited to a Shabbat dinner by an Orthodox Jew, another student. You know, again, the approach of, let me talk to you. And he met all these people who were very different from himself. And eventually he completely turned around. So you're right. One-on-one, I think it's more possible.
Yeah. This reminded me a little bit of something that happened when I was a kid. I was wearing my Young Israel baseball hat because that was the team I was on. And a group of kids came up to me, and I got beaten up pretty bad. This was in New York City.
Wow.
And it was, you know, a lot of anti-Semitic slurs they were saying, and, you know, it was clear that was the reason why they beat me up. So I sort of resonated with that idea a little bit, Jordan, in the presentation, but I wasn't part of a group of kids that were fighting back, but my impulse was certainly to fight back. I just was outgunned.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
But then something related happened later on when I moved to New Mexico, and I was the only Jew around. And so I was very different. And some kids came up to me and they asked me if they could see my horns.
Oh, no.
But
God.
the thing about it is, this was ignorance.
Yeah.
They were told by
Yes.
their parents that I had horns. They actually weren't mad at me. They didn't dislike me. They were very friendly. They just were brought up to think this.
Unbelievable.
One-on-one, I was perfectly fine with them.
Wow.
You know.
Thanks for sharing that.
Do you think the story makes it clear that they regretted what had happened? I didn't get that feeling.
I don't know. What do people think?
Can I say my sense of that is not that they were regretted it or that they were proud of it. The fact that they did not know when to run meant they didn't really understand what they were feeling at that moment. They expected that the revenge that they would get would make everything right. And instead they all felt bad that someone was hurt. And so they didn't feel right in celebrating. I don't think anybody a kid, a 14-year-old kid in that moment is going to be able to have a conscious thought about, did I do the right thing or the wrong thing, or should I feel bad or not? I think that they just simply reacted by, they felt bad. It felt awful to see this kid broken, even if it was someone that they felt deserved to be broken. But they didn't know how to deal with their own feelings. They were confused.
Yeah.
There's
Does the story need a sequel?
no, I think that as these kids grow and mature, they'll start to understand their experience just the way Jory understands his experience then and how it has been part of shaping him, their experience, V. Blum's experience with the anti-Semite, and Ace Cohen's experience. Here's a kid who he didn't want to be part of violence. And as soon as he punched the kid, what did he do? He ran away. He felt terrible about inflicting the violence and never wanted to do it. It's not a, you know, I was curious. I read online, I was interested in what other people thought about the story. And I saw somebody had reviewed the story and said that they were disappointed that they didn't celebrate their victory and what's the point of this whole thing. And someone saying that doesn't understand that a human being with a conscience and who cares about someone can't just inflict pain and walk away simply celebrating the person's pain. There are too many other things that are involved.
Okay,
You know, Jordan, the way you just explained it is exactly how I felt when you finished that story, and still feel to this day. And I have a little story too about Rachel, and she was in high school, and there was this girl that she had previously been friends with, but all of a sudden started really, really harassing her in front of others about being a dirty Jew, and she's going to go to hell, and all of these things about being Jewish, terrible. And then the kids would laugh and all of that. So Rachel would come home and she would cry about it. So I decided that well, we decided that we were going to go see the principal and tell him what was going on with this girl and how she was really having a bad effect on Rachel. And we did that. And they spoke to her and they spoke to her mother. But after that, Rachel went to her and forgave her. And they actually became friends again, very, very dear friends, and stayed friends
wow.
for many years after that. And so I still don't know how I feel. I'm kind of like those boys, because one side of me wants to go and beat that girl's head in for how she made Rachel feel and being so rough and so rash. And the other side wants me to forgive her because she didn't know what she was doing. She just was ignorant of Jewish people. And so part of me just wants to forgive. So I'm kind of like those boys. I'm surprised when I feel one way, and they were surprised, I think, at how they felt about what had happened when they expected to feel joy and they didn't.
Thanks, Paula. That's a powerful story.
Yeah.
Yeah, forgiving somebody like that is really, really hard. And yet sometimes people get transformed, just by that kindness and that compassion.
Yeah.
Well, if you're getting beaten up though, that's every day. That makes it a little different from just having somebody
Of
yell
course.
names at you.
Of course, of course.
And
Any other?
somebody was
Can
picked
I
on.
say one thing about Rachel's experience with that girl? The fact is, the two of them dealt with it.
That's right.
So the forgiveness, whether you want to forgive this girl or not, is not nearly as important as the experience that the two of them had when they finally decided, oh, I guess what I had been told about being a Jew is not what is true. And here, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt so you can understand me as a Jew. And so
Right.
that they reached out to understand each other.
That's true. That's
That's the
very
best.
true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And
Okay.
I was happy for that.
Does anybody else want to make a final comment before we take a little bit of a break? Yes, I see. Is that Judy? David?
It's David. Just to the Yarno story, a little bit of maybe a funny thing to lead with, because sometimes we misread situations, and it's maybe worth being aware of that. When we were in Mexico, in an Indian village, anthropologist, what do you want? This guy who we liked, was a poor kind of wood collector, was talking about Jews and in Spanish, but with horns and cloven hooves and various other things that caused us some anxiety. It turned out eventually, I guess, that our anxiety was misplaced. We were trying to make sense of this, and we had a problem because Judy's name in Spanish, Judith, serves two meanings. tried to remember to call her Julia, but I'm too half-assed to remembering things. But we got into further conversation with the guy, and I forget how it came up, but he mentioned that a couple of guys from Israel with the whole schmear. I mean, that they were raising money, some kind of religious thing in Israel. They came through, and I asked him about them. Were they? They're good guys. I like them. Were they Jews? Were they Udit? Oh no, not at all. And what had happened, which is a little bit of a funny moral here, I don't know if it's a moral or just an observation, the priests had done such a good job of demonizing Jews, literally, I mean, the whole schmear,
Yeah.
that they overdid it. That guy never made the connection.
Wow.
And I said the discovery sort of left me a little relieved, probably left Judy relieved too.
He had a different name for them, remember? They were not Hudit.
Hebreu. They were.
Oh, Hebrews. Yeah, because Yehudit, which is Judith in Hebrew, means Jew.
Yes, that was my problem.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break because people may need to go use the facilities, and we'll be back in 5 minutes for a short service. It's only probably going to be about a half an hour. So please take a moment.
The simplistic way of talking about this stuff that irritates me. The angle of your story is wonderful.
Yeah, that was why I thought, even though Yarnock sort of set it up for me, why I thought I was tempted by doing it, but suggesting that sometimes there's smoke without fire.
Well, everybody said that, but I mean, I wanted to say, but I just didn't feel I could. When you have individuals, it's like well, first of all, there's this lore in Christianity that lies behind them.
Judy and Dave, you're being heard by everyone.
Sorry.
All of us.
I'll mute it. I'll mute it.
Okay with me, but I like what
Thank you,
you
Carolee, for
say.
letting me know.
Everything's awfully quiet.
Just stay muted.
Look, it says turn on original sound. There we go.
Okay. Are you there, Morris? And everybody, Jory?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great.
I'm here.
Okay, so
I don't
we're
know if
going to,
everyone is here.
Then
I
I'm
don't
here.
know if everybody's back, but we're gonna start. We're gonna, hang on a second, let me start recording again. We're going to proceed with Havdalah, which not only is going to separate our week from our Shabbat, but also is going to separate the time before the high holidays to the time that we are now really kind of entering the high holidays, the Selichot. So we will begin with Havdalah, and even though we can't all sing together, you can certainly sing behind your muted microphones.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei beri harachem borei beri harachem Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim borei minei besamim Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei haaretz borei meorei haaretz Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol Eliyahu tishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Shavua Tov, 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 Shavua Tov. A good week, a week of peace, make madness reign and joy increase. Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov.
Again, if you'd like to keep your Zoom in speaker mode, that way you can focus on people who are singing. You know, sometimes we say, I wish I could be 2 places at once, but Jory manages to be 4 places at once. It's pretty amazing. So Martin Buber said, God does not want to be believed in, to be debated and defended by us, but simply to be realized by us, which means that we embody the values of Judaism and we go out into the world and act out according to our values. Hashti Venu, return again. The high holidays are about returning to the right path. Sometimes we stray, but we can always come back to the right path. And we say to God, take us back, Adonai, let us come back to you. Renew in our time the days of old. Return again, return again. Return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are, born and reborn again. And we sing in Hebrew.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'nashuva, V'nashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu
Unmute yourself.
I thought I had, sorry about that. The psalmist sang, at midnight I rise to give thanks and praise. And so we come to this hour of Selichot under the canopy of night to celebrate goodness, to proclaim what is right and true, to praise, to thank, to bless the great giver who gives and renews our lives. We turn to loved ones, to friends, and to our people everywhere, the whole house of Israel, and our hearts turn toward the human family. We pray for its healing. Yet hardest of all is the inward gaze, the return to ourself, the honest reckoning of the soul, cheshbon hanefesh. We ask, how to account for selfish acts and senseless anger? How to account for the shadows, the storms, the bitterness in our lives, the damage and distress that we cause? How to own up to it all and find our way back with integrity in peace? We ask, have we the will to change? And if not now, when? I lift up my eyes to the mountains, from whence shall come my help. My help shall come from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. May your footsteps never falter. Sleep not your God, he will sleep not nor slumber. Israel's God, the Lord will guard you from evil. He will guard your soul. The Lord will guard your going and coming, both now and forever. Let's read the personal reflection silently. These are all important questions that we need to ask during this period in our holiday season. We continue with Shomer Yisrael. God is our guardian.
Shomer, Shomer Yisrael, Shemo She'erit Yisrael. Ve'ayovad Yisrael, Ve'ayovad Yisrael, Ha'omerim Shema Yisrael. Shomer, Shomer Goy Echad, Shemo She'erit Am Echad. Ve'ayovad Goy Echad, Ve'ayovad Goy Echad HaYachadim. Shirim Echad, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shomer, Shomer Yisrael, Shemo She'erit Yisrael. Ve'al yovad, ve'al yovad Yisrael, ve'al yovad Yisrael ha'omerim, ha'omerim Shema Yisrael.
Forgive me, my God, for I spilled my life like unclean water upon the earth. Forgive me for all my wounds I caused with my own hands. And yet, sobbing like a beaten child, I cried out to you that you, my God, might bandage them. Ki anu amecha, for we are your people.
Ki anu amecha v'yata Eloheinu, anu vanecha v'yata avinu, anu avadecha v'yata Adonenu, anu kalecha v'yata chelkeinu, anu nachalatecha v'yata goraleinu, anu tzonecha v'yata ro'enu, Anu charmecha v'yata notreinu, Anu pu'ulatecha v'yata yotzreinu, Anu rayatecha v'yata dodeinu, Anu segulatecha v'yata keroveinu, Anu amecha v'yata malkeinu, Anu mamirecha v'yata mamireinu.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we are your people and you are our God. We are your children and you are our father, our mother. We are the people who serve you and you call us to serve. We are your community and you are our portion. We are your legacy and you are our purpose. We are your flock and you are our shepherd. We are your vineyard and you watch over us. We are your work and you are our maker. We are your beloved, and you are our lover. We are your treasure, and you are the one we cherish. We are your people, and you reign over us. We offer you our words, and you offer us yours. So forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. And we now change the Torah covers from blue to white to indicate our desire for purity during this period.
Mitzrayim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomcheha meyushar diracheha darechei noam v'chol nativoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu
There are those who struggle for a day, and they are good. There are those who struggle for a year, and they are better. There are those who struggle for a lifetime. They are the indispensable ones. Ashamnu, where we confess our sins. We can beat our breasts while we're doing it.
Ivarnu Zanu Hamas Tofalu Shaker Yasnu Kizalu Razu Maranu Yasu Samanu Aminu Bashanu Kishinu Ore Roshanu Shikatnu Tianu Ta'inu Titanu.
I'd like to assure you that we did not get together during COVID-19 and sing together in close proximity in the sanctuary. This was a video from 2018. That might explain why we look a little different, a little bit younger. But we are going to read the Asham Nu in English together. We abused and abandoned. We acted without thinking. We blamed others when we failed. We boasted and belittled. We coveted and corrupted. We coerced the weak to do our will. We drove away those we love with silence. We deceived and denied. We enticed and enslaved. We exalted money and material goods. We fouled air, sea, and land. We flattered and falsified. We gravitated to those who gossip. We gave up our ideals and gave in to our impulses. We hated and humiliated. We held grudges and refused to forgive. We ignored and idolized. We insisted that we were right. We judged others rashly and wrongly. We were jealous and unjust. And therefore, we ask for God to return us to our better selves. Hashivenu.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'nashuma, V'nashuma, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu Adonai
I asked myself, who's listening to these words of confession? Magnificent ear of the universe, are you my personal confidant? Or am I just talking to myself? Then I got it. The question is a diversion to distract me from hearing who I really am. We continue with Avinu Malkeinu, and you can read with your microphones, unfortunately, muted. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu. Carol Lee, would you read responsively with me, please? Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Good.
You want me to read the English?
The English, please.
Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu.
Whoops. Whoops.
Oopsie.
It's gone.
It's gone. I guess we're all forgiven. Jory, what happened? Okay, thank you. Let's start again. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu.
You want me to read the?
I would like you to read the English, Carolee. Yes, please.
Yes. Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu ve'al Olaleinu ve'tapenu.
Oops. Oops. Oops.
Sorry, we're still begging God for mercy.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families.
Avinu Malkeinu, Khalid Dever v'cherev v'ra'av me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kala kol tsar umastin me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Oops.
Something's acting up here. Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu b'sefer Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Shana Tova.
And I have no English for that, but evidently
Avinu,
have a good year.
Yes, renew for us a year.
Avinu Malkeinu, a good year.
Now, Bob.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vaneinu, Ki Ein Banu Masim. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'Chesed. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'Chesed v'Hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki Ein Banu Masim. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'Chesed. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'Chesed v'Hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki Ein Banu Masim. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'Chesed. Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'Chesed v'Hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki Ein Banu Masim.
And we are going to conclude our service with the sounding of the shofar, which is the mitzvah for this period during the holidays. We are meant to hear the sound of the shofar to wake us up from our lethargy.
Chekia. Shevarim teruah. Tekia gedola.
Eric is amazing. And if that didn't wake you up, I don't know what will. I'd like to thank all of the people who made this service possible tonight. Cantor Bob and Barbara and Eric Sabar, and then of course, Morris Maduro and Jory Yarmoff, who not only played music and sang and participated in so many ways, but also did a lot of editing and sound editing, and just really made this very possible, as they will the whole high holiday season. So thank you all for attending, and thank you again for all of you who made this possible tonight. And good night.
Thanks to Jordan too.
Oh yeah, Jordan. Thanks, Jordan. Forgot about him. Thank you, Bob. I always forget someone.
And thank you, Rabbi, from all of us.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good night.
Thank you. It was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And thank you, Carol Lee, too.
Oh,
Great
my
service.
pleasure. And thank Jordan. That was really well thought out and well done. It was very nice.
Wonderful.
And it was wonderful singing.
It was. I agree. Thank you all.
Thank you, choir members, for singing.
And thank you, Bob and Barbara and Jory and Morris and, and everybody. It
Let
was
me make
really
one comment, by the way, that you can all hear me, I assume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The song I Lift Up Mine Eyes with all the pictures, by the way, which yours truly did. But the most important thing about that is it was composed by our Jewish music composer in residence by the name of Elliot Levine. He's waving right there.
Hey, well, thank you, Elliot, for your
Thank you, Elliot.
contribution. Yes,
Oh,
thank
and
you.
Elliot too.
You should have written that on the slide at the beginning.
It was.
It was? Oh,
Was.
Yes,
well, I was
it
probably,
was.
it was? Okay, sorry. I just, there are a lot of things I was, it's sort of like being a director at in a TV studio and trying to, okay, I got to get the PowerPoint up and I got to do this and I got to, as we're all doing that. Morris is doing that and Jory. Oh, and thank you, Lynn, for your beautiful swaying back and forth with all the material from the Havdalah.
Just to let you know, one little addendum is that Elliot is going to be the cantorial soloist in residence in Nantucket back east. There's obviously a limerick about there was a cantor from Nantucket, but I won't continue. You can use your imagination for the cantor from Nantucket.
Luckily, we have some of Elliot. Elliot has done some music for the high holidays with other people, so that's really great. And Amy will be part of it as well. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Great news.
Yeah. I mean, luckily, Morris has been recording our services every year, which I didn't even notice until last year, I think. And so we have a nice archive of a lot of music. So that helps a lot. Plus, Jory's able to split himself into 4. And
by the way, I was able to actually sing out of my ears and my nose and my mouth. So it was a trio there at the end.
we're able to sing out of your ears and your nose and your mouth. I don't quite get it, but okay.
Don't ask.
I was singing my harmonies as well.
Oh, you did your harmony. Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. So
Okay.
anybody, I mean, if anybody wants to hang out and talk, about the story that Jordan did or about something, I mean, I'm happy to hang out and continue the conversation, or we can all go to sleep. I'm not going to sleep yet, but yeah.
My Mac.
I'm going to make dinner.
Make dinner, okay.
Yes.
Time for dessert. I'm amazed that
Some of us haven't had dinner yet.
I'm amazed that Christine and Irving are able to stand there in an absolutely static pose and not move a muscle. It's amazing. I noticed them on the bottom of the screen, at least for me.
Well, what happened to?
Good night.
Good night.
Night, everybody. Be
Good
well.
night. Good to see you all. See you next Friday.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, Mom.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, that was sweet, Jordan.
And Susan and Jerry, I know you guys don't have a microphone or anything, but I hope you guys are okay with all the smoke in Oregon. We feel for you, although it's pretty bad here too.
I have a friend in Oregon besides Jerry Gordon, and that is I just said the air quality right now is 493.
Wow.
The maximum is 500.
500, yeah, wow.
So it's
Really?
Yes. Oh yeah. It was 493.
Well, it said it was dire here, so I don't know what that means because it wasn't as bad as Oregon. So if it's dire here, what is it in Oregon?
147 here earlier.
How much?
It was 147 earlier today. I don't know.
That doesn't sound quite as bad, but
This is Oregon.
It's fuzzy.
I can't read it.
It says 493.
That's terrible. That's lethal.
It is. That's how. Yeah, it is absolutely lethal. There's
It is because you know what? When all this stuff is burning, you're burning stuff that's in the house, a lot of chemicals and metals, and that's going into your system, which is really terrible. Martha, how's Larry doing? Uh-oh, she just turned herself off. Okay, I guess I won't find out.
Hi, Morris. So Morris, we need to find out about the volume. The rabbi. I guess we're still there now. Now you get the ins and outs. No, your voice was fine with your lavalier microphone. It was kind of loud and present. Some of the sound, some of the music that was being played, it seemed like it was kind of withdrawn.
The problem is the videos are all made at different times using different audio files, and some of them have 10 instruments, some of them have just voice, some of them have more reverb, some of them have more bass, and they're all inherently different. So that's something we'll have to figure out before Rosh Hashanah.
I have a question also about.
I feel that I needed to adjust my sound at all. It was fine.
Yeah, it was fine for me, but yeah.
Okay.
Why do you think Jordan's video was so fuzzy?
Jordan's video was underexposed throughout. It looked like like a head, and so I turned up the gain in the player, and because otherwise you wouldn't see his shirt. So it was just underexposed throughout.
Next time
curtain and a dark shirt.
I keep saying to him, "Do you want me to help you?" No. Do it himself. And if I'd been there, I could have noticed a few things. But okay, whatever.
Hello, Susan and Jerry.
I don't think they have a microphone.
I wish they did.
Yeah. So anyway, there are quite a few people who came tonight. It was like 50 something until the service, and then it dropped down a bit. But anyway, that's good. So good to see all of you.
Good to be seen, right?
Yeah.
Good to be seen. Well, good
All
night,
right.
all. See you in a week.
Yeah. See you next Friday. Okay. I'm gonna end our gathering here.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you again, Morris and Jory.